Hello student, welcome to DSCG Home Classes, a digital initiative by Directorate of School Education Jammu. Myself Lal Singh, teacher, Govt. High School Chanderkote, District Ramban, class 6th to 10th, subject English Grammar, topic Modals. मॉडल में हमने पहले वीडियोस में डिस्कस किया कैन, कुड, मे, माइट, शैल, विल, शैल, यार, शुड आर वुड। आज हम बात करेंगे मस्ट और आर टू की। सबसे पहले हम देखते हैं मस्ट, यूज ऑफ मस्ट। मस्ट इज ए डिफेक्टिव वर्ब, इट हैज़ नो पास्ट फॉर्म। मस्ट इज ए डिफेक्टिव वर्ब, इट हैज़ नो पास्ट फॉर्म। It is used to express present or future obligation. It is used to express future, present or future obligation. In reported speech, must is used for past tense. In reported speech में must जो use होता है for past tense के लिए. Except in reported speech, must is not used to express past obligation normally. Except in reported speech के अलावा must past में कहीं भी use नहीं होता है. Is not used to express past obligation normally. In some circumstances, must change to had to in indirect narration. In some circumstances, must जो change हो जाता है had to में different narration. In indirect narrations में किसमें in indirect narration. Must is used to express command, compulsion or order. मस्ट किसके लिए यूज होता है? यूज टू एक्सप्रेस कमांड, कंपल्शन, ऑर्डर. सोल्जर मस्ट ओबे ऑर्डर्स विदाउट एनी क्वेश्चन. सोल्जर्स मस्ट ओबे ऑर्डर्स विदाउट एनी क्वेश्चंस. ऑल द गर्ल्स मस्ट अटेंड द फंक्शन. ऑल द गर्ल्स मस्ट अटेंड द फंक्शन. यू मस्ट डू एज यू आर टोल्ड. यू मस्ट डू एज यू आर टोल्ड. मस्ट इज also used to express moral duty or obligation. Must is also used to express moral duty or obligation. We must respect our elders. We must respect our elders. You must help your friends in need. You must help your friend in needs. Must is also express necessity, urgency, circumstantial, compulsion. I must leave now, otherwise I may miss the train. I must leave now, otherwise I may miss the train. The electricity will be cut off at AM, so I must complete my work before. The user must not express prohibitions, emphatic advice. Student must not resort to copying. ये prohibition है. Students must not resort to copying. You must not miss the classes. Emphatic advice. You must not miss the classes. It is emphatic advice. You must not talk to that fellow. You must not talk to that fellow. It is prohibitions. Visitor must not feed the animals. Prohibition. Must express strong probability, likelihood or logic presumption. She must be 80 now. They have not arrived so far. They must have taken a wrong turn. They have not arrived so far. They must have taken a wrong turn. Next, use question. In question, introduce with must. If answer in affirmative, we use must. Otherwise, in negative, answer need not. Must I attend the meeting? Must I attend the meeting? Yes, you must. No, you need not. Must I raise the issue in board meeting? Yes, you must. No, need not. No, need not. The use of must with have plus past participle of the main verb shows a logical conclusion about a past event. The use of must with have plus past participle of the main verb shows a logic conclusion about past event. The roads are wet. It must have rained last night. The roads are wet. It must have rained last night. You must have heard about the robbery in the bank in our locality. You must have heard about the robbery in the bank in our locality. The use of must plus have been showing certainty of happening. The use of must plus have been shows certainty of happening. He must have been living here. He must have been living here. She delivered her speech quite fluently. She delivered her speech quite fluently. She must have been a debater. She must have been a debater. Now use of ought to. अब किसकी बात करेंगे हम? यूज ऑफ ought to कहाँ कहाँ यूज होता है, इसके क्या यूजेस हैं? ought to is also modal verb. The same form of ought to is used for present and future. It is also used in past when preceded by verb in the past tense or followed by perfect infinitive. The ought to is also a modal verb. The same form of ought to is used for present and future. It is also used in past when preceded by a verb in the past tense or followed by a perfect infinitive. Ought is always followed by full infinitive too. I ought to write to her letter today. I ought to write to her today. I ought to write to her today. I knew I ought to write to her. He said I ought to write. I know or knew that I ought to have written. I know knew that I ought to have written. The negative form of ought to is ought not or oughtn't. And interrogative form ought, I, he or you, etc. Negative interrogative form is ought I not, oughtn't, etc. Ought is used for advice, moral obligation, duty. Moral obligation or duty. You ought to consult a physician. It is advice. We ought to respect our parents. It is our moral duty. We ought to help our friend. We ought to help our friend. Moral obligations. You ought to follow the advice of doctor. It is advice. You ought to follow the advice of doctor. You ought not to smoke so much. It is also advice. Children ought not to watch TV so long. It is also advice. The use of ought in perfect tense denote an unfulfilled obligation or an action that didn't take place. She ought to have invited him in the function. She ought to have invited him in function, but she didn't invite him. He ought to have helped him in that matter. He ought to have helped him in that matter, but he didn't help him. He ought to have opposed the move, but he didn't oppose. They ought to have come in time, but they didn't come in time. You ought to have stopped at the traffic light. You ought to have stopped at traffic light, but you didn't stop. It is generally assumed that ought to and should have similar use. It is generally assumed that ought to and should have similar use, but in formal notice or for information etc. should but not ought is used. Students should be prepared to donate the blood. The traveler should be in possession of the following documents. On hearing the alarm bell, the student should leave their rooms immediately. We can't use ought in above sentences. Thank you.